"Excuse me, ma'am. This seat is not for you." The words slice through the cabin like a blade. Every head turns toward seat 2A, where Dr. Key Willian, a dark-skinned African-American woman in a beige blazer and white blouse, sits perfectly still. The flight attendant towers over her, voice rising with practiced outrage. First class is for paying customers, not she never finishes. Cameras lift. Phones tilt. A male security officer steps into frame, heavy boots against carpet. Passengers whisper, eyes flicking between the furious woman in uniform and the calm one who refuses to shrink. Dr. Key Willian doesn't flinch. She looks up slowly, dark eyes steady under warm cabin light, and says in a voice softer than steel, "I am exactly where I belong." Silence. The kind that rearranges a room. Every phone keeps rolling as tension thickens, and in that hush, a single truth settles over everyone watching. This isn't just another passenger argument. This is where the story changes. The cabin hums softly, a quiet before the storm. Dr. Key Willian sits in seat 2A of first class, her beige blazer sharp, her face calm, too calm for what's coming. The camera closes in on her dark skin glowing under warm cabin light. Behind her, passengers settle, unaware they're about to become witnesses. A white flight attendant leans in again, voice cutting through the hush. Heads turn. A phone rings. A security officer steps closer down the aisle. The air thickens with judgment and the soft hiss of gossip. Dr. Key Willian doesn't move. Her hands stay folded, her eyes steady, and her silence is louder than the voices around her. In that stillness, you can feel the shift, the story beginning, the storm forming. She places a compact black briefcase under the seat, sets a phone face down on the tray, and folds her hands. A silver watch, nothing ostentatious, just exquisitely precise, ticks once and disappears beneath the cuff of her blazer. She looks like someone who has removed every unnecessary word from her life. The attendant's smile hardens, like glass over a flame. Her name tag reads, Kay Hollis. She reaches for the boarding pass that Key is already offering and lifts it like contraband, tilting it toward the light as if invisible ink might confess. She takes too long to read something printed in a large, clear font. Seconds stretch the way rubber bands do when you know they're about to snap. A businessman 2 rows ahead angles his phone toward the scene. A college kid peeks over the seat. Someone whispers. "We'll have to verify this," Hollis says finally, keeping the pass pinched between 2 fingers as if it might stain. "People try things." Key doesn't ask what things people try. She simply says, "Of course," and waits, the unflappable steward of her own time. Hollis doesn't move. She lingers, eyes mapping Key's blazer, the watch, the neat bun, and the stillness, looking for the tell no one has ever found. When stillness yields nothing, she changes tactics. "We've had a lot of confusion lately," she says louder now, so others can hear their permission to judge. Folks wandering up from the back. No one laughs, but a few faces relax, relieved to find themselves on the side that doesn't need defending. A man in 1C raises the brightness on his phone and starts a live post with the hungry, aimless curiosity people mistake for purpose. The camera loves friction. It drinks it like water. Key rests her forearms on the armrest and looks out the oval window at the late afternoon sun polishing the tarmac. She thinks about the strange choreography of power, how it expands in silence and shrinks under noise, how it is not a weather system but a mirror, reflecting whoever steps in front of it. "Security to gate 13, Hollis says into her mic. "All authority now. Passenger refusing to move?" "I haven't refused," Key says, still soft. "I've only sat." Hollis slides her phone from her apron pocket, opens a live platform, and, gently, almost like a confession, angles the camera toward the aisle, the seat, and the woman in it. A teenage girl across the aisle watches the red dot bloom on screen and sinks into herself. She has been hungry for the kind of courage that speaks in the moment. The first security officer appears at the cabin door with the second pressed in behind him like a shadow. Boots soften on carpet. A man with a clipboard, later introduced as the service manager, takes a position that allows him to oversee while disowning. Everyone becomes a role. The businessman becomes a witness to a version of the world he prefers. And Key remains Key, unmodified, curious about where the next line will be drawn. Wrong seat, Hollis says, refusing to move. First class is full, the officer nods. Ma'am, he says to Key, attention finally landing where it should have started. We can handle this quickly if you'll return to your assigned seat. I am in my assigned seat, she answers. Would you like to scan the boarding pass? The manager pretends to verify what he's already decided not to believe. The officer glances, nods, and hands it back like a task completed. Let's step off and verify, the officer says, stepping aside toward the aisle he's already cleared. His tone is made of courtesy wrapped around insistence. Key smiles the way people smile when they're asked to buy a second copy of a document the first copy already proves exists. I'm comfortable here, she says, and I have nothing more than you have to verify. The manager stiffens. Ma'am, we can rebook you, he announces, too loudly, for the benefit of the people who will later be asked to report how firmly he protected them. She looks up at him, not through him. I appreciate rebooking, she says, when it respects facts. Hollis exhales, fed up with civility. Look, we don't have time. Time, Key says, is a luxury best spent carefully. She reaches into her blazer with deliberate calm. One security officer's hand twitches toward his belt. Key moves too slowly to be threatening. The sound in the cabin compresses. She withdraws a slim leather case, matte and unbranded, and places it on the tray. The click of the clasp is louder than it should be. The first thing people notice is not the name. It's the texture. The way it absorbs light instead of reflecting it. The way the gold lettering seems pressed into it rather than painted on. She leaves the card face down for a moment. An invitation to respect rather than a demand for attention. Before we make an irreversible decision, she says, looking at the manager now, it may be useful for your captain to join us. The manager's jaw works hard against humility. That won't be necessary, he says, which is what people say when it is absolutely necessary. Dr. Key William turns the card face up with a fingertip, like a pianist testing a key. The name is simply stated, unadorned by titles it does not need. Dr. Key William. Beneath it, William Aerospace Group, President and Chief Executive Officer. And then, smaller, a line more architecture than ornament, Commercial Fleet Leasing and Operations, primary lessor to Meridian Airlines. A murmur moves through the cabin. Someone inhales like a timer starting. The businessman in 1C, hand shaking with adrenaline, zooms his phone camera on the card's etched letters and realizes his viewers are not going to believe this, which means they will watch twice. Is this some kind of joke? Hollis blurts. There's bravado in her voice, and also the brittle edge of realizing jokes are only funny when you tell them yourself. No, Kay says. It's context. The manager squares his clipboard against his chest. Even if this is who you say, the policies will hold, Key finishes softly, even if no one violates them. But one was violated when you filmed a passenger without consent. Another was when you framed a request as a refusal. A third when assumptions outran evidence. The officer glances reflexively at Hollis's phone. The red recording dot is gone, but the memory of it lingers like burned sugar. The cockpit door sighs open. The captain, silver-templed, steady hands, 30 years of weather behind him, steps into the aisle. Air bends around authority. He looks to the manager for a summary and gets one too short for truth. Then his gaze lands on the card as if drawn by gravity. He doesn't look at the name first. He looks at the company. Pilots can ignore alarms, but not ownership. Dr. William, he says slowly, reading, realizing, recalibrating. The edges of the room change color. If this is correct, it is, she says. Not arrogant, not pleading. Just certain, like arithmetic. The manager's face attempts two expressions and succeeds at neither. He looks like someone who knows he's about to become an example in a seminar. Key picks up her phone, opens an app, scrolls once, and stops. When she speaks, it's as if she's reading aloud from a ledger the world forgot it's been keeping. This aircraft, she says, tapping the tail number engraved above the window, is leased from Willian Aerospace Group to Meridian Airlines for $2.18 million per month on a 96-month term, with performance reviews tied to on-time departures and passenger complaint indices. The clause you are near triggering is 34B, behavioral risk to brand and asset. It's not a clause I wanted to write. It's a clause I wrote because we live where we do, not where we say we live. Silence stretches, shaped like respect. The teenage girl's eyes gleam with recognition. The businessman lowers his phone, realizing narration can be a responsibility, not a hobby. The captain looks at the manager, and this time the manager cannot hold the look. Hierarchy folds in on itself. The officer shifts weight. Leather seats exhale an expensive hush. Dr. Willian, the captain says, I apologize. This should have been straightforward. His tone carries sincerity no manual teaches. It still can be, she replies. Hollis's face cycles through denial and disbelief. We didn't know who you were, she stammers. The defense of those who think respect is earned by resumes, not by existence. That, Key says, is the point. The manager clings to bureaucracy like a life vest. And yet, ma'am, refusal to comply with crew instructions is a phrase that can be made to mean many things, she answers. What I did was ask for verification without surrendering dignity to speed. What I withheld was my willingness to be removed from a truth I paid for. A soft chime. Her phone again. She glances, nods once, and sets it face down. My general counsel just texted, she says evenly. He's watching a mirror stream because some policies are words and some are habits. Let's keep this in the realm of policies. The captain exhales. We'll depart on time, he says, optimism threading through guilt. If we resolve this now. His eyes plead, help me do the right thing before the wrong thing finishes writing itself. Then let's resolve it, Kay says. She looks at Hollis for the first time as if looking is a gift. Ms. Hollis, please read my ticket aloud. Hollis swallows. Seat 2A first, boarded at 1643, verified ID. And policy on recording passengers during conflict? Kay asks. Hollis opens her mouth and closes it. The captain answers instead. Prohibited without consent except under Section 9B security emergencies. Policy on public accusations before verification. The manager, defeated, says quietly, disallowed. Key nods. Acceptance of error is the first step. After that, corrections. For a heartbeat, no one breathes. The plane itself seems to wait. Outside, the sky glows the color of second chances. I'm sorry, Hollis says abruptly, her voice breaking through what used to be certainty. I jumped to conclusions. That's not procedure. I shouldn't have recorded. Key inclines her head. Apology accepted, she says. Acceptance not as absolution but as permission to begin again. The manager clears his throat. We'll need to file a report, he says, clutching paperwork as if it can float. We'll file several, Key replies. One here, one with your leadership, one with mine. And because I prefer building to burning, we'll also file a plan. The captain, relieved to hear direction, asks, what do you propose? Immediate. End recording, document honestly, notify operations lead and corporate counsel. She turns to the officer. No further action from security unless someone's safety requires it. He nods, grateful to do less instead of more. Short term. Remove my name from any rebooking list you drafted, apologize to the cabin for the delay without naming me, and depart. Long term. We'll talk off this plane. Long term always arrives, she adds gently. The manager nods. There's nothing left to argue. The captain lifts his chin a fraction, a signal that makes metal move. Ladies and gentlemen, he announces into the intercom, we'll be pushing back shortly. Thank you for your patience as we resolved a procedural matter. He clicks off and turns to her. Thank you, he says, meaning it. It's not charity, Dr. Key Willian answers. It's investment. In you, in your people, in mine, in the idea that we can all be better because we've seen ourselves. The engines hum awake. Wheels roll. Passengers exhale. The teenage girl across the aisle straightens her spine for the first time in a long time. The businessman lowers his phone and wonders whether clicks can become conscience. But the story isn't finished. Not yet. At 30,000 feet, the cabin light softens, turning strangers into neighbors. The captain visits with a printed apology form he will also deliver in person. The manager has retreated to reconsider the architecture of self-preservation and how one might rebuild it to include others. Hollis walks the aisle with water poured like an offering. Dr. Key William looks out the window at the vast white clouds, those factories of possibility, and thinks about the policies she once drafted in a room that smelled like new carpet and quiet risk. She remembers typing a line she had to defend for weeks. Policies don't create abuse. They reveal it and price it. Her phone vibrates. A message from her chief operating officer. The social team detected unauthorized Stan, unauthorized Ream. Triaged. Narrative Turan, unauthorized Narrative by P, the narrative, with Ilat's Apo with the pilot's logi. Press pinged. We wait, she replies. No, the pilot's replies. No press. Not a spectacle. A syllabus. Prep plan for Meridian CEO. Offer help, not war. Draft tonight. It would be easy to turn this into a scalp. But Dr. Key William prefers bridges over bonfires. Harder and better, she reminds herself. Trepley's. No, the place she's always chosen to work. A folded note slides onto her tray from across the aisle. The teenage girl's handwriting trembles with sincerity. I want to be like you when I grow up. Key flips the paper and writes back. Be yourself. But insist on facts. When they land, the sky wears the color of sleep. Wheels kiss asphalt, soft and certain. The captain's voice returns, calm through the speakers. From the flight deck, my thanks. Remember, the we can all be each other's calm in a storm. At the gate, the manager approaches politely. Dr. William, would you prefer a private room to discuss next steps? She shakes her head. Privacy is where stories like this curl up and die. We'll talk tomorrow, we bringing your policies and your courage. In the car that carries her away from the terminal, she opens her tablet and begins to type. Meridian Partnership. Behavioral risk to brand and asset. Remediati, bring remediation on framework. 11 bullet points appear under her hands. Remediation, each one a blueprint for dignity, consent policy, enforcement, bias recognition modules with renewal, cycles, real-time escalation to an independent ethics desk, passenger dignity, training for all staff, captain, each captain's override, authority when discrimination risks appear, privacy guardrails for every crew, device. No retaliation pledges quarterly audits, role-based, accountability public reporting, and a clause. A percentage of saved incident costs goes to crew bonuses. Because captains, because his change sticks when people feel it in their lives. She sends the outline to 3 people. Her general counsel, Meridian's COO, and the FAA liaison, because liaison, who doesn't yet know how much he'll appreciate this email. Morning arrives unannounced, as it always does. By 9, Dr. Key William is at Meridian's headquarters in a boardroom that believes it is more powerful than it is. The CEO begins with an apology. Gouliaison. Good D. He tries to finish with a donation to a foundation. Predictable. Good. Predictable. E. Key stops him with a quiet palm. Your people don't need charity, she says. They need systems that stop them from becoming stories. He hesitates, then nods. Tell me what it costs. Everything that doesn't matter, she says. Which, if we're honest, is a lot. They negotiate with the precision of professionals, predictable, no grandstanding, just clarity. By day's end, the framework is adopted, in outline by morning, in substance by lunch, in no lunch, and budget by evening. When an organization truly wants to change, you can tell by its speed. A week later, training begins in a room smelling of coffee and nerves. Dr. Key William stands without podium o lunch and a podium R microphone. Podiums make people hold their breath, she says. She tells them stories and a podium, no tot of humiliation, but of kindness. A grandmother in row 20, afraid of flying but brave enough to try. A crew member who offered water at the perfect time and unknowingly rewrote someone's day. We're not here to punish, she tells them. We're here to reward what's right. Hollis sits in the third row, hands clasped in her lap, learning how compost becomes growth. When it's time for questions, she stands. How do you pull a prejudice out by the root if it feels like it's holding the soil together? Kay smiles softly. You water other roots, empath, not empathy, why, curiosity, humility, and the courage to say, I don't know. You make time your ally, not your trap. Months unfold like well-written pages. Complaints drop by half, then by half again. In St. Louis, an agent kneels to greet an elderly passenger at eye level. In Phoenix, a pilot uses his override authority not to dominate but to protect. In Newark, a supervisor opens each shift meeting with a single question. What bias did you silence today? The hotline rings some days, silent. Empathy, days, and ist on others. Be days and is, but it always answers. Dr. Key William flies less now, preferring trains that trust the earth. But when she does board a plane, the atmosphere has changed. Not reverence, but he hates reverence, readiness. Readiness to be better before being asked. On a winter evening that wears night like a shawl, she takes seat 2A again. The same model plane, but machines don't hold grudges. The crew is new. The air feels lighter. The flight attendant offers water without hesitation. A young man across the aisle recognizes her, but not as a celebrity, but as the proof that professionalism can be grace. He smiles, grateful. As the plane climbs, the captain's voice fills the cabin. Folks, he says, we train for turbulence in the air. And now we train for turbulence on the ground, too. Thank you for being the easy part of our day. Key closes her eyes for a moment and blesses the sentence for how ordinary it is. Change that lasts is built on ordinary sentences spoken by people who choose to keep saying them. Months later, she's on stage at a leadership forum. The air smells of lanyards and ambition. Policy, she tells them, isn't a shield you hide behind when arrows fly. It's the invitation you send to your better self to arrive on time. What did it cost? Someone asks. And they always do. She answers with numbers and then a story. Fewer complaints, safer crews, and a grandmother who no longer cried at gate B12 because someone had finally learned to see her. When the talk ends, the Meridian CEO greets her in the wings, handshake honest this time. You were right, he says. We were carrying a cost we couldn't see. You were carrying a habit, she answers. Costs hide in those. Later that night, in another anonymous hotel room, she opens her laptop to finish an article titled, How to Build a Dignity Budget. She writes that speed is often the enemy of fairness, that slowness done right is precision. Precision, and asking what evidence saves months of repair. She sends the piece to her team, to Meridian's communications head, and to a young attendant who once asked if policy could be written so her grandmother could understand. Tell your grandmother, she writes, we're making the sky a place where no one has to prove they belong before they go where they've paid to go. Morning again. Departure again. The plane waits like a patient animal, trusting the hands that guide it. Dr. Key William sits in 2A, same seat, new story. Hollis, precision. And now I'll just Karen, passes us by carrying coffee like contrition with a lid. Dr. William, she says, not whispering anymore. Thank you for not ruining me when you could have. Key looks up and smiles. Thank you for doing the harder thing. The plane lifts. The ground below turns into a mosaic of choices, good and bad. Above the clouds, she rests her head and lets the engine stitch a line through the day. She thinks of her mother, Pass's mother, who taught her to hide inside books when the world grew too loud, and a teacher who once wrote, Key Mother wrote, Key finishes what she starts. She is still trying to live up to that. Turbulence hits, Mill wrote, Key, mild D, predictable. The captain's voice, we've got a rough patch ahead. Seatbelts, please, passengers comply. Trusting him, true, mild, trusts built not on power, but on 100 small honesties stacked like bricks. When they land, an email awaits from a crew lead in another city. We had an incident. We followed the protocol. It worked. Attached, a note from a passenger. The trust thanking you for seeing me. She forwards it to her team with 4 words. This is the currency. Then she steps from the jetway into another bright terminal, carrying herself with the quiet of someone who knows that power isn't the ability to make people smaller. It's thank the discipline to make rooms larger. She walks past glowing ads promising faster boarding for a fee and laughs softly. Speed is expensive when it costs dignity. She has the receipts. And somewhere, as another flight boards, a woman sits down with a boarding pass that matches her presence. A crew member smiles, not because of who she is, but because of what is true, and says, "Welcome."